The crystal chandeliers above me blurred into stars as I blinked back tears, my feet aching in the cheap heels I'd borrowed from my roommate. The marble floor of the Augustine Hotel ballroom gleamed like ice beneath hundreds of polished shoes, none of them mine. Not really. I didn't belong here. I knew it. They knew it. But I needed this job more than I needed pride. Champagne? I whispered to a woman dripping in diamonds, my voice barely audible over the string quartet. She didn't even glance at me, just plucked a glass from my tray with manicured fingers and turned back to her conversation, as if I were a piece of furniture. Invisible. That's what I'd become in the 6 months since Mom died, a ghost moving through spaces where real people lived real lives. I wove through the crowd, my black server's uniform too tight across my chest, too short at the hem. The other girls from the catering company looked polished, professional. I looked like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. My reflection in the mirrored walls confirmed it. Mousy brown hair pulled back too severely, makeup applied with a shaking hand, eyes too wide and frightened for a 23-year-old woman. The event was some kind of charity gala. Rich people pretending to care about poor people while drinking $1,000 wine. I'd stopped listening to the speeches after the first hour. All I cared about was making it through the night without dropping anything, without drawing attention, without losing this job like I'd lost the last 3. That's when I first saw him. He stood near the bar, surrounded by men in dark suits who moved like shadows, fluid, dangerous, always watching. But he was different. Taller, broader, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than my yearly rent, perfectly tailored to shoulders that seemed carved from stone. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been beautiful if it weren't so hard, so cold. Sharp jaw, Roman nose, eyes like black ice scanning the room with the kind of assessment that made my skin prickle. Even from across the ballroom, I felt the air change around him. People gave him space without seeming to notice they were doing it, like birds instinctively veering away from a predator. When he lifted his glass, the men around him tensed, ready. When he turned his head, they followed his gaze. I looked away quickly, heart hammering. Men like that didn't notice women like me. That was fine. I preferred it that way. You. The voice came from my left, smooth, accented, dripping with wealth and entitlement. I turned to find another man, older than the one by the bar, but just as expensively dressed, silver threaded through his dark hair, and his smile was all teeth. Behind him stood 2 more suited men, hands folded in front of them, watching me with flat expressions. "Yes, sir?" I managed, balancing my tray carefully. "You work here?" His eyes traveled down my body in a way that made my skin crawl. "I'm with the catering company, yes." "Good. I need you to deliver something." He pulled a small envelope from his jacket pocket. Cream-colored, expensive paper sealed with red wax. "Take this to the man by the bar, the one in the black suit." I followed his gesture and my stomach dropped. The dangerous man. The one who looked like he could break someone in half without blinking. I'm not sure I should... It's important. The older man's smile never reached his eyes. Business, you understand. I didn't. But I needed this job. My fingers trembled as I took the envelope, setting it on my tray beside the remaining champagne glasses. The paper felt heavy, ominous. "Tell him it's from Marco Vitelli," the man continued. "He'll understand." I nodded, though every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to run, to disappear into the kitchen and never come back. But rent was due in 5 days. The electric company had already sent 2 warnings. Mom's medical bill still arrived like clockwork, even though she was 6 feet under. So I walked. Each step across that gleaming floor felt like walking toward the edge of a cliff. The crowd seemed to part around me. Or maybe I was imagining it. My heels clicked too loudly. My breathing was too shallow. The envelope sat on my tray like a bomb. 20 feet away I could smell him. Expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Tobacco. Whiskey. Danger. 15 feet. His men noticed me now. One of them shifted position, hand moving toward his jacket. 10 feet. He turned, and those black eyes locked onto mine. I froze. It was like being pinned by a spotlight. Every rational thought evaporated. He was more terrifying up close, not because he was ugly, but because he was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Sharp, cold, deadly. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, pale against olive skin. His mouth was hard, unsmiling. "Sir?" My voice came out as a squeak. He didn't speak, just stared at me with an intensity that made my knees weak. I have something for you, from..." I glanced back at the older man, who was watching us with that same predatory smile. "From Marco Vitelli." Something flickered in those black eyes. Not quite emotion, more like recognition. Danger. One of his men stepped forward and plucked the envelope from my tray before I could blink. He examined it, then handed it to his boss with a slight nod. The dangerous man broke the seal with his thumb, never taking his eyes off me. He read whatever was inside in seconds, his expression unchanging. Then he looked at me again, really looked at me this time, like he was memorizing every feature, every flaw, every trembling breath. "Who are you?" His voice was deep, rough, with an accent I couldn't place. Italian, maybe. Russian. Something that spoke of old countries and older violence. "Nobody," I whispered. I work for the catering company. Your name." It wasn't a question. It was a command. And I was too frightened, too exhausted, too broken to do anything but obey. "Emma Chase." "Emma." He studied me for another long moment, and I felt naked under that gaze, stripped of every pretense. He saw exactly what I was, a scared girl playing at being an adult, drowning in debt and grief, one missed payment away from disaster. Then he dismissed me with a slight turn of his head. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my tray. One of his men caught my elbow, steadying me or warning me. I couldn't tell which. Then I was moving through the crowd again, my face burning, my hands shaking so badly the remaining glasses rattled. I made it to the kitchen before my knees gave out. Locked myself in the staff bathroom and pressed my forehead against the cool tile, trying to remember how to breathe. What had I just done? What was in that envelope? Why had Marco Vitelli used me as his messenger? Why had that man looked at me like... I couldn't finish the thought. When I finally emerged, my supervisor was waiting with crossed arms and a disappointed expression I'd seen too many times before. "Emma, we need to talk." My heart sank. "You were specifically requested to serve the VIP section," she said, consulting her tablet. "But several guests complained you seemed distracted, nervous. One said you were shaking so badly you nearly spilled champagne on a $10,000 dress. I'm sorry, This is your third event with us." "You're just not working out," she sighed, already looking past me toward more competent employees. "Finish out the night, collect your pay, but don't come back for tomorrow's booking." Fired. Again. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded, because what else could I do? Beg, cry. Explain that I'd just been used as a pawn in something I didn't understand, that the weight of that black-eyed man's stare had rattled me to my core. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I served drinks, collected plates, avoided looking at anyone directly, especially not toward the bar, where I could still feel those eyes watching me, even when I knew he'd left hours ago. It was past midnight when I finally escaped into the November cold, my thin jacket doing nothing against the wind that whipped off Lake Michigan. The catering company's van had already left, taking the other servers home. I'd missed it while collecting my final paycheck. $300 that would barely cover a quarter of what I owed. The bus stop was 2 blocks away. I started walking, heels clicking on concrete, breath fogging in the freezing air. Chicago at night was a different creature than Chicago by day, darker, sharper, full of sounds that made you walk faster. I was halfway down the second block when I heard the footsteps behind me. My pulse spiked. I walked faster, clutching my purse against my chest. The footsteps matched my pace. Not running, just following. Emma Chase. I spun around, hard in my throat. Marco Vitelli stood under a streetlight, flanked by his 2 shadows. He looked different out here, away from the chandeliers and champagne. More predatory. His smile was gone, replaced by something colder. "That's quite a mess you've made, sweetheart." I don't understand." I just delivered a message. Did you read it? He stepped closer. No, I would never. Good. Another step. Because if you had, I'd have to kill you right now. The world tilted. This wasn't happening. This was Chicago, not some movie. People didn't say things like that on public streets. But the gun one of his men pulled from his jacket looked very real. You delivered a declaration of war to Dante Moretti, Marco continued conversationally, like we were discussing the weather. One of the most dangerous men in this city. Maybe the most dangerous. And now he's seen your face, knows your name. Dante Moretti. The name sent ice through my veins. I'd heard it before, whispered in the kinds of conversations people stopped when you walked by, connected to violence, to power, to things that happened in shadows. I didn't know, I breathed. Please, I was just doing my job. I didn't. Relax, sweetheart. Marco's smile returned, sharp as broken glass. I'm not going to kill you. You're much more useful alive. He gestured, and one of his men grabbed my arm in a grip that would leave bruises. What are you doing? Let me go. Can't do that. You see, Moretti doesn't accept challenges lightly. He'll come looking for answers, for leverage. And you. Marco tilted his head, studying me like a bug under glass. You're the perfect bait. I tried to scream, but a hand clamped over my mouth. They dragged me toward a black car idling at the curb, and I fought with everything I had, kicking, twisting, biting down on the fingers against my lips until I tasted blood. It wasn't enough. The car door opened like a mouth, and they shoved me inside. I landed hard on leather seats, my head cracking against the opposite door. Stars exploded across my vision. Nothing personal, Marco said, sliding in beside me. Just business. The door slammed shut. The locks engaged with a sound like a prison cell closing, and as the car pulled away from the curb, away from the streetlights, away from any chance of rescue, I realized that my invisible, insignificant life had just become very, very visible to exactly the wrong people. I woke up to the smell of cigarette smoke and expensive leather. My head throbbed where it had hit the car door. And for a disorienting moment, I thought I was back in Mom's hospital room, waiting for another round of bad news from doctors who'd stopped learning my name. But hospital rooms didn't smell like cigars, didn't have floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, didn't have armed men standing outside locked doors. I was lying on a burgundy velvet sofa in what looked like an office. All dark wood and darker intentions. My shoes were gone. My jacket, too. Someone had covered me with a blanket that probably cost more than my car, back when I'd had a car. She's awake. I jerked upright, immediately regretting it as pain lanced through my skull. One of Marco's men stood by the door, speaking into his phone with the kind of quiet authority that made my stomach clench. Where am I? My voice came out hoarse, frightened. What time is it? He ignored me, pocketing his phone and resuming his statue-like position. The message was clear. I wasn't worth acknowledging. I was cargo. Property. Bait. Bait for Dante Moretti. The memory crashed back. The envelope. Those black eyes. Marco's casual threat. You're the perfect bait. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to think through the panic. I needed to get out of here. Needed to run. Hide. Disappear into whatever cracks of the city would still have me. But the windows were too high. The door was guarded. And even if I could escape this room, I had no idea where I was, or how many more men waited outside. The door opened, and Marco Vitelli walked in like he owned the world. Maybe he did. He'd changed out of his tuxedo into casual slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. He looked younger somehow, more dangerous without the formal veneer. Good morning, sweetheart. He settled into the chair across from me, crossing one ankle over his knee. Sleep well? Let me go. I hated how my voice shook. Please. I won't tell anyone. I'll leave Chicago. You'll never see me again. I'm sure that's true. He lit a cigarette, studying me through the smoke. But Moretti's already seen you, already knows your name. You think he'll just forget. Men like him don't forget anything. Then what do you want from me? Insurance. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something sharp and green that probably had an Italian name I couldn't pronounce. Moretti rejected my very generous offer last night. My proposal for territorial cooperation, that envelope you delivered, it was his last chance to avoid a war. War. The word hung in the air like smoke. I still don't understand what that has to do with me. Your leverage. He said it simply, like explaining basic math to a child. Moretti doesn't know you're here yet, but when he finds out I have the girl who delivered his death sentence, the girl he looked at like... Marco's smile turned knowing. Well, let's just say I noticed how he looked at you, Emma. How long he stared. That's not nothing. Not for a man like Dante Moretti. My chest tightened. It wasn't, I'm nobody to him. Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, he'll come for you. To eliminate a witness. To send me a message. To satisfy his curiosity. Marco shrugged. Doesn't matter why. What matters is that when he does, I'll be ready. He stood, grinding his cigarette into a crystal ashtray. You'll stay here, comfortable, safe, as long as you cooperate. And if I don't? His smile vanished. Then you stop being useful, and I don't keep useless things. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a coffin lid. 3 days passed like a prison sentence. They kept me in that office-turned-bedroom, bringing meals I couldn't eat and magazines I couldn't focus on. The windows didn't open. The door stayed locked. The guards rotated shifts with military precision, never speaking to me, never meeting my eyes. I was invisible again. But this time, the invisibility felt more like erasure. Like I was slowly disappearing into the expensive furniture and imported carpets, becoming just another possession in Marco Vitelli's collection. On the 4th day, everything changed. I was staring out the window, watching the city wake up in shades of gold and pink, wondering if anyone had noticed I was missing, when the shouting started. Distant at first, then closer. Gunshots cracked like thunder, and I threw myself behind the sofa, heart hammering against my ribs. More shots, breaking glass. Men yelling in Italian, in English, in languages I didn't recognize. The building shook. Or maybe that was just me, trembling so hard my teeth chattered. Then silence. Worse than the noise. The kind of silence that meant something terrible had finished happening. The door to my room exploded inward. I screamed, pressing myself against the wall, waiting for bullets or worse, but the men who poured in weren't Marco's. They wore different suits, moved with different energy. Military, precise, deadly. And behind them, filling the doorway like an eclipse, stood Dante Moretti. He looked like vengeance carved from marble. Blood spattered his white shirt. Not his, I thought wildly, because he moved without pain, without hesitation. His black eyes swept the room, cataloging exits, threats, me huddled in the corner like a terrified animal. Clear, one of his men said. Dante crossed to me in 3 strides. I flinched back, but there was nowhere to go, and then his hand was on my face. Rough, calloused, tilting my chin up so I had to meet those impossible eyes. Did they hurt you? His voice was low, controlled, but something violent simmered underneath. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, and I realized I was crying. When had I started crying? His jaw clenched, a muscle jumping beneath olive skin. Can you walk? Another nod. Then move. Now. He didn't wait for agreement, just wrapped one hand around my upper arm and pulled me toward the door. I stumbled, barefoot and disoriented, but his grip was iron. The hallway outside was a war zone. Bullet holes in the walls, blood on the marble floor, bodies I tried not to look at. Don't look, Dante said, as if reading my mind. Just walk. We moved through the carnage like ghosts, his men forming a protective circle around us. I heard sirens in the distance growing closer. Someone was shouting orders in rapid-fire Italian. The air smelled like gunpowder and copper. Outside, 3 black SUVs idled at the curb, engines running. Dante shoved me into the back of the middle vehicle, climbing in beside me. His men piled into the other cars, and then we were moving, tires squealing against asphalt, I pressed myself against the opposite door, trying to process what had just happened. Dante Moretti, the most dangerous man in Chicago, according to Marco, had just shot his way into a fortified building to, what? Save me? Claim me? He was on his phone now, speaking in clipped Italian that sounded like threats disguised as conversation. Blood still marked his shirt, his hands. He'd killed people tonight, maybe a lot of people, because of me. The car stopped at a red light, and I made a decision born of pure panic. I yanked the door handle. Locked. Dante's hand clamped down on my wrist before I could try the window. Don't. Let me out. I pulled against his grip, desperate. I want to go home. I want... There is no home. He said it flat, factual, like announcing the weather. Marco knows where you live, your address, your work history, your mother's grave. Everything. His fingers tightened, not painful, but inescapable. You go home. You're dead within an hour. Then take me to the police. The police? He almost smiled. Sweetheart, almost. Half the CPD is on someone's payroll. You really think they'll protect you from Marco Vitelli? For me, the light changed. We started moving again. I stopped fighting. Because what was the point? I was out of moves, out of options, out of the fragile illusion that I controlled anything about my life. Where are you taking me? Somewhere safe. Why? I turned to face him fully, searching that hard face for any hint of humanity. Why did you come for me? Marco said. He said you'd use me as a message. Kill me to prove a point. Dante's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in his eyes. Marco Vitelli is a fool who mistakes cruelty for strength. He released my wrist, leaving red marks I'd feel for days. You delivered his declaration of war. That makes you his messenger. Under the old codes, messengers are protected. Old codes, I repeated numbly. Rules. Even monsters have rules. He pulled out another phone. This man seemed to have an endless supply. And typed something one-handed. You'll stay with me until this is resolved. Resolved? What does that mean? It means Marco dies, or I do. He said it like discussing dinner plans. Either way, you'll be free. The SUV pulled into an underground garage, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. We descended deeper into the earth, past rows of expensive cars, until we reached a level marked private. The vehicle stopped in front of an elevator flanked by 2 more armed men. Dante climbed out, then waited, actually waited for me to follow. Like I had a choice. Like this was anything other than trading one prison for another. The elevator required a key card and a fingerprint. It rose so smoothly I barely felt the movement, my ears popping as we climbed floor after floor. When the doors opened, I stepped into a penthouse that made Marco's office look like a motel room. Windows wrapped around 3 walls, offering a panoramic view of Chicago at dawn. The floors were dark hardwood, the furniture all clean lines and muted colors. Art I didn't recognize hung on the walls. Probably originals, probably worth more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. This way. Dante led me down a hallway to a bedroom that was bigger than my entire apartment. King-sized bed, walk-in closet, bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. Everything in shades of cream and gold that somehow didn't feel warm. You'll stay here, he said, gesturing around like he was showing me a hotel room, not a gilded cage. There are clothes in the closet. My assistant will bring more in your size tomorrow. Don't try to leave. The elevator won't work without authorization, and the stairwells are monitored. So I'm a prisoner? You're protected. He moved closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. There's a difference. Is there? For the first time since the ballroom, something almost like interest crossed his face. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Fear. Gratitude. Tears. His head tilted slightly, studying me. You're frightened. But you're angry too. That's unexpected. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. My mom died 6 months ago. I've been fired from 7 jobs. I'm drowning in medical debt. And now I'm caught in a war between 2 criminals because I delivered the wrong envelope. I met his eyes, refusing to look away. Anger is all I have left. Something shifted in his expression. Not softness exactly, but recognition. like he understood what it meant to have nothing left but rage. "Get some rest, Emma Chase." He turned toward the door. "Tomorrow, we'll talk about what happens next. Will you answer my questions?" He paused in the doorway. "Depends on the questions." "Why did you look at me like that, at the gala? Like you?" I couldn't finish. Couldn't name what I'd seen in those black eyes. Dante was quiet for so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because you reminded me of someone. Someone I failed to protect." "Who?" But he was already gone, the door closing with a soft click that sounded too much like all the other doors that had closed in my life. Final, absolute, leaving me alone in another beautiful room that felt like a tomb. I sank onto the bed, still wearing my ruined server's uniform, and finally let myself cry, not for what had happened, but for what was coming. Because men like Dante Moretti didn't save people out of kindness. They collected debts, demanded payment, and whatever price he'd eventually ask, I knew I couldn't afford it. Outside the windows, Chicago blazed with morning light, indifferent and eternal. Inside this golden cage, I was already learning to recognize the sound of my own heartbeat, fast, frightened, furious, and the heavier, slower rhythm of footsteps in the hallway beyond my door. Watching, waiting, protecting or possessing, I couldn't tell which. Maybe there was no difference after all. I didn't sleep. How could I, knowing that armed men stood outside my door, that somewhere in this fortress, Dante Moretti was planning his next move in a war I'd accidentally started? Instead, I paced the length of the bedroom until my bare feet ached, then stood at the windows watching the city transform from dawn to daylight. From up here, Chicago looked beautiful, clean, safe. The people moving through the streets below had no idea what happened in penthouses and warehouses, in the spaces between legal and lethal. They went to work, grabbed coffee, complained about traffic. Normal problems, normal lives. I wanted to hate them for it. Instead, I just missed being one of them. Around 9, there was a soft knock at the door. I spun around, heart racing, but it wasn't Dante. A woman entered, early 50s, elegant in tailored black pants and a silk blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun. She carried several shopping bags, all from stores I'd only window shopped at in my previous life. Miss Chase. Her accent was slight, refined. "I'm Teresa, Mr. Moretti's assistant. I've brought you some essentials." She set the bags on the bed with practiced efficiency, pulling out clothes, toiletries, even makeup. Everything in my size, everything expensive. I stared at a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to be. "How did you know? Mr. Moretti is very thorough." Teresa's smile was professional, revealing nothing. "There's breakfast waiting in the dining room when you're ready. I suggest you eat. He doesn't like to be kept waiting." She left before I could ask what he wanted, closing the door with that same soft click that was starting to drive me insane. I showered in the obscenely luxurious bathroom, scrubbing away 4 days of fear and captivity until my skin turned pink. The hot water felt like a small rebellion, wasting his resources, taking up his time. Petty, maybe, but it was all the power I had. The clothes fit perfectly. Dark jeans that actually flattered instead of hanging loose, a cream-colored sweater soft as a cloud. Even underwear in the right size, which should have been humiliating but mostly just felt inevitable. Dante Moretti knew everything about me. Privacy was another illusion I'd lost somewhere between the ballroom and this cage. I found the dining room by following the smell of coffee. Rich and dark, nothing like the instant powder I'd survived on for months. The space was all windows and white marble, dominated by a table that could seat 12. Only 2 places were set. Dante sat at the head, reading something on a tablet, still wearing last night's blood-spattered shirt. He'd rolled the sleeves higher, and I could see more scars on his forearms, some old and faded, some newer, pink and angry. A roadmap of violence. He looked up when I entered, those black eyes tracking my movement across the room. "You slept." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "No." "Smart." He gestured to the chair on his right. "Sit." I wanted to refuse on principle, but the food spread across the table made my stomach growl traitorously. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, bacon. More food than I'd seen in one place since Mom got sick, and grocery shopping became a luxury I calculated to the penny. I sat, started filling my plate with shaking hands. "Eat slowly," Dante said, not looking up from his tablet. "You'll make yourself sick." Shame burned through me, but he was right. I forced myself to take small bites, to chew properly, even though everything tasted like heaven, and my body screamed for more, more, more. We ate in silence for several minutes. He seemed content to ignore me, scrolling through what looked like financial reports. Numbers I couldn't decipher, columns that probably represented money I couldn't imagine. This was his world. Power measured in digits, influence bought and sold like commodities. "You have questions," he said finally, setting down the tablet. "Ask." I swallowed a bite of croissant. "Why am I really here? I told you. You told me about old codes and protection." "I don't believe you." I met his eyes, forcing courage I didn't feel. "Men like you don't rescue people out of honor." "So what do you want from me?" His expression didn't change, but something almost like approval flickered across his face. "You're right. Honor is a luxury I can rarely afford." He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a puzzle he hadn't quite solved. "The truth? Marco used you to declare war. That makes you a symbol, and symbols have power. I'm not a symbol. I'm a person. In my world, there's no difference." He poured more coffee, the gesture oddly domestic. "Marco thinks he can use you to bait me, to distract me while he consolidates his territory. He's wrong, but as long as he believes it, you're valuable." "Valuable how?" "Alive. You're leverage I hold instead of him. Dead, you're a message that I don't tolerate threats against what's mine." He said it casually, like discussing the weather. "Either way, you matter. That's more than you had before." The words hit like a slap, because he was right. Before the ballroom, before the envelope, I'd been nobody. Invisible. Disposable. At least now I mattered enough to keep alive. "What happened to the person I reminded you of?" I asked quietly. "The one you failed to protect." Dante's jaw tightened. For a long moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My sister, Juliana." He said her name like a prayer. "She was 19. Beautiful." His fingers wrapped around his coffee cup hard enough that I heard the ceramic creak. "A rival family took her, used her to get to my father. By the time we found her, he didn't finish. Didn't need to." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be." He looked at me with eyes gone flat and cold. "I killed every single one of them, burned their territory to ash. That was 15 years ago, and people still whisper about it." A terrible smile ghosted across his mouth. "That's what happens when you take something that belongs to me." The implicit threat hung in the air. I was something that belonged to him now. Marco had taken me, and Dante had taken me back. Possession wrapped in the language of protection. "I want to go home," I said, hating how my voice broke. "I know." He stood, buttoning his shirt cuffs with precise movements. "But want and have are different things. You'll learn that here." "How long?" "Until Marco is dead, or until he stops looking for you." Dante moved toward the door, then paused. "There are rules while you're under my protection. Don't leave the penthouse. Don't contact anyone from your old life. Don't test the security." He turned to face me fully. "And don't mistake my protection for kindness, Emma. I'm not a good man. I'm just the better option than Marco Vitelli." "That's not saying much." "No," he agreed. "It's not." He left, and I was alone again with the remains of breakfast and the weight of my new reality. Days blurred into a week, then 2. I existed in a strange limbo, comfortable but captive, safe but suffocating. Teresa brought me books, clothes, anything I asked for except freedom. The penthouse became my entire world, 50 floors above the city, but might as well have been a different planet. Dante was often gone, disappearing for hours or days at a time. When he was here, he mostly ignored me, working in his office or taking calls in Italian that sounded like threats wrapped in silk. But sometimes, late at night, I'd find him in the living room, staring out at the city with a glass of whiskey and an expression that looked almost human. I learned his routines. Coffee at 6, black and bitter. Calls to his various lieutenants throughout the morning. Gym at noon. I could hear the rhythmic thud of fists against a heavy bag somewhere in the penthouse. More calls. More meetings. Dinner at 8 when he was home, always perfectly prepared by a chef I never saw. And he learned mine. How I curled up in the window seat with books I couldn't focus on. How I avoided mirrors because seeing myself in borrowed clothes in a borrowed life made everything worse. How I woke up at 3 a.m. from nightmares about gunfire and blood, gasping in the dark. The third time I woke up screaming, he appeared in my doorway like a shadow made solid. Nightmare? He leaned against the doorframe, wearing only pajama pants, his torso a canvas of more scars and ink I'd only glimpsed before. I pulled the blanket up to my chin, suddenly aware I was wearing only a tank top and shorts. I'm fine. You're not. He crossed to the bed, moving with that predatory grace that made my pulse spike. You haven't been fine since the ballroom. Whose fault is that? Mine, Marco's, your own, for being in the wrong place. He sat on the edge of the mattress, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same scent from that first night, now familiar in a way that felt dangerous. Blame doesn't change the situation. Then what does? Time. Adaptation. His eyes found mine in the darkness. Acceptance. You want me to accept this? Accept being your prisoner? I want you to stop fighting what you can't change. His hand reached out, and I flinched. But he just tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture almost gentle. You're exhausting yourself. And for what? Tears burned behind my eyes. I had a life. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That life is gone, Emma. Mourn it if you need to, then move forward. Forward to what? I demanded. What happens when Marco's dead? Do you just let me go? Put me back in my shitty apartment with my shitty jobs and pretend none of this happened? Dante's expression shifted into something I couldn't read. Is that what you want? I want to not be a pawn in your war. I want to matter because I'm a person, not because I'm useful. The words came out harsh, raw. I want someone to see me as more than leverage, or a symbol, or a fucking mistake. I see you. The words hung between us, weighted with meaning I didn't dare examine. His hand was still in my hair, thumb brushing my temple in a rhythm that matched my racing heartbeat. You see a problem to solve, I whispered. Maybe at first. His voice dropped lower, rougher. Not anymore. I should have pulled away, should have reminded myself, that this was Stockholm Syndrome. That captivity bred false intimacy, that he was a monster who'd killed for less than looking at him wrong, but I didn't move. Couldn't move. Because for the first time in 6 months, someone was really looking at me, not through me, not past me, at me. This is a mistake, I breathed. Yes. He leaned closer, and I could feel the heat of him, the danger. But I've made worse. His phone buzzed, then again. Then started ringing with an urgency that shattered the moment like glass. Dante pulled back, his expression shuddering. He checked the screen, and something dark crossed his face. Get dressed. Now. What's wrong? Marco knows you're here. He was already moving toward the door. All business again. He's making a move tonight. You need to be ready. Ready for what? He paused in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. For war, Emma. The kind you can't hide from anymore. Then he was gone, shouting orders in Italian, and the penthouse exploded into controlled chaos. Men I'd never seen before materialized from nowhere, checking weapons, coordinating positions. The safe haven I'd grown reluctantly accustomed to transformed into a fortress under siege. I dressed with shaking hands, jeans, boots, the warmest sweater I had. If we had to run, I wanted to be ready. If we had to fight, no. I couldn't think about that. Teresa appeared, pressing something cold and heavy into my hands. A phone. What? Memorize this number. She pointed to a contact labeled simply D. If you get separated from Mr. Moretti, you call this, only this. Understand? I nodded, pocketing the phone. Good girl. She squeezed my shoulder once, the first real warmth anyone had shown me in this place. Stay close to him. He'll keep you safe. How do you know? Her smile was sad, knowing. Because I've worked for Dante Moretti for 20 years, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Before I could process that, before I could ask what she meant, an explosion shook the building. The windows rattled, alarms screamed, and somewhere in the chaos Dante was shouting my name. The explosion came from below, a deep, rumbling boom that felt like the building's bones were breaking. I stumbled, catching myself against the doorframe as Teresa pushed me forward. "Move!" she shouted over the alarms. The hallway was chaos, men running with weapons drawn, barking orders in Italian and English. Smoke curled up from somewhere beneath us, acrid and choking. My eyes watered, my lungs burned, but Teresa's hand on my back kept me moving forward. Dante appeared through the smoke like an avenging angel, or a demon, depending on your perspective. He'd changed into all black, a gun holstered at his hip, another in his hand. Blood streaked his cheek from a cut I hadn't seen him get. "Emma." His voice cut through the noise. "Come here now." I didn't hesitate. Whatever else he was, right now he was safety. I ran to him, and his arm locked around my waist, pulling me against his side. "Basement's compromised," one of his men reported. "They came through the parking garage, at least 20 hostiles. Marco?" Dante's voice was ice. "Not confirmed yet, sir." "Then confirm it." He turned to another man. "Get the cars ready. North exit." Then to Teresa. "Take her to the safe room. No." The word left my mouth before I could stop it. Dante's eyes snapped to mine. "This isn't a discussion. You said not to get separated." I gripped his jacket, my fear transforming into something sharper. "Teresa said to stay close to you, so that's what I'm doing." Something fierce flashed across his face, approval mixed with frustration. "Stubborn. You would be too." He almost smiled. Almost. Then another explosion rocked the building, closer this time, and the decision was made for us. "She comes with me," Dante ordered. "Enzo, Marco, flank us. Teresa, coordinate evacuation of the other residents. Make it look like a gas leak." We moved as a unit toward the private elevator, but halfway there, the lights cut out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red that made the smoke look like blood. "Stairs," Dante decided, changing direction. The stairwell was narrow, concrete, nothing like the luxury of the penthouse. Our footsteps echoed as we descended. Dante in front, his men behind, me sandwiched in the middle where I couldn't run even if I wanted to. We made it down 3 floors before we heard them coming up. Dante raised his fist, and everyone froze. Voices drifted up from below. English with thick Chicago accents, Marco's men. They were sweeping the building floor by floor, looking for us. "Back up," Dante whispered. Quietly. We reversed direction, moving as silently as possible, but concrete stairs aren't kind to stealth. A scuff of shoe against stone. A slight rattle of a gun against a belt. "Did you hear that?" They'd heard us. "Go," Dante hissed. And we were running, up instead of down, away from the exit, back toward the penthouse we'd just fled. Behind us, shouts erupted. Footsteps thundered. A gunshot cracked, and concrete exploded inches from my head. I screamed, ducking instinctively. Dante grabbed my hand and yanked me forward with brutal efficiency. We burst back into the penthouse hallway, just as more of Marco's men appeared from the elevator. They'd overridden the system somehow. We were trapped. Dante shoved me behind him, raising his gun. His men formed a protective semicircle, weapons trained on both directions. The smoke was thicker up here now, and through the haze, I counted at least a dozen hostile figures closing in. "Moretti!" A familiar voice cut through the tension. Marco Vitelli stepped out of the smoke like he owned it, flanked by twice as many men as Dante had. He'd ditched the expensive suits for tactical gear, a gun in each hand, his smile sharp as broken glass, nowhere left to run. "I don't run." Dante's voice was pure menace. "You should have remembered that before you came to my home." "Your home?" Marco laughed. "This is Chicago, not Sicily. You don't get to claim territory like some feudal lord." His eyes found me behind Dante's shoulder. "And you definitely don't get to keep what I took first. You didn't take her. You kidnapped her." Dante shifted slightly, blocking me more completely from view. "There's a difference. Semantics. Marco raised one gun, pointing it casually at Dante's chest. Either way, she's coming with me, along with your head, which I'm going to mount on my fucking wall. The air crystallized with violence about to break. I could feel it, the tension before the storm, the breath before the scream. Dante's men tightened their grips on their weapons. Marco's men did the same. Someone was going to die. Maybe everyone. Wait! I pushed past Dante's protective stance before he could stop me, stepping into the no man's land between the two factions. Wait, please, Emma, get back here. Dante's voice was a growl of barely restrained fury. I ignored him, focusing on Marco. You said I was useful alive. You said I was leverage. I still am, but not like this. Marco's smile widened. What are you proposing, sweetheart? Let his men go. Let everyone go. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. I'll come with you willingly. No fight. No bloodshed. Just let them live. No. Dante grabbed my arm, spinning me around. His eyes blazed with something beyond anger, something that looked almost like fear. You're not sacrificing yourself for me. I'm not sacrificing myself for you. I met his gaze steadily. I'm doing it for them. I gestured to his men, these strangers who'd protected me simply because he'd ordered it, and for Teresa, and for everyone else in this building who's going to die if this turns into a war zone. Noble, Marco observed. Stupid, but noble. Unfortunately, I don't make deals with livestock. He pulled the trigger. Everything slowed. I saw the muzzle flash, saw Dante's eyes go wide, saw him move, not away from the bullet, but toward me, his body becoming a shield. The impact drove us both to the ground. I landed hard, Dante's weight crushing the air from my lungs. Hot liquid spattered across my face, my neck, blood. His blood. No, no, no. I tried to push him off, to see where he was hit, but he was already moving, rolling us behind a marble pillar as more gunshots erupted. The penthouse became a battlefield. The carefully cultivated elegance shattered under bullets and blood. Glass exploded. Walls splintered. Men screamed and fell and died. And Dante kept himself between me and every bullet, his breathing harsh in my ear, his hand pressed against my head to keep me down. You stupid bastard, I sobbed. You're bleeding. Shoulder. I'm fine. He wasn't fine. I could feel the blood soaking through his shirt, hot and sticky. Stay down. You're going to die protecting me. Better me than you. He said it simply, like it was obvious. Like his life meant less than mine when we both knew that was insane. The firefight lasted maybe 3 minutes. Maybe 3 hours. Time stopped meaning anything in the smoke and chaos. But eventually, the gunfire slowed. Stopped. Dante's men had driven Marco's back. Or killed them. I didn't want to know which. Sir! One of Dante's lieutenants appeared through the smoke. North stairwell is clear. We need to move now. Dante tried to stand, swayed, and I caught him before he fell. For the first time, I saw genuine pain cross his face. I'm getting you out of here, I said, wrapping his uninjured arm around my shoulders. Don't argue. Wasn't going to. He leaned heavily on me, and I staggered under his weight but held firm. We made it to the stairwell, down 6 flights while Dante bled and breathed in ragged gasps. His men surrounded us, checking corners, clearing the way. By the time we reached the garage, he'd left a trail of red behind us. 2 armored SUVs waited, engines running. Enzo pulled open the back door, and I helped Dante inside before climbing in after him. The vehicle lurched forward before the door even closed, tires screaming against concrete. Hospital, I demanded. No hospitals. Dante's eyes were half closed, his face pale beneath olive skin. Marco owns half the doctors in this city. Then where? Safe house, 20 minutes. He leaned his head back against the seat, breath coming shallow. I've survived worse. I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me. Don't you dare die on me. Not after everything. His hand covered mine, blood slick and trembling. Worried about me, Emma? Yes, you idiot. Tears streamed down my face. Yes. Good. His thumb brushed my cheek. smearing his blood across my skin. That's good. His eyes closed. Dante. I shook him, panic clawing through me. Dante, stay awake. Still here. But his voice was fading, his grip on my hand loosening. Just tired. Drive faster, I screamed at Enzo. The city blurred past the windows. Red lights, we ran them. Traffic, we forced through it. Every second felt like an eternity while Dante's breathing got shallower, his skin colder. I'd watched my mother die over months of slow deterioration. This was different. Sharp, immediate, terrifying in its speed. I pressed my hands against his shoulder wound, trying to slow the bleeding, but it seeped through my fingers like his life was draining away, and I couldn't stop it. You don't get to die, I told him fiercely. You hear me? You saved me. Multiple times. You protected me when you didn't have to. You looked at me like I was real, like I mattered. You don't get to do all that and then just die. His eyes cracked open, focusing on me with effort. Emma, save your strength. No, listen. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. If I don't make it, you're making it. Teresa has instructions, money, new identity. You disappear somewhere Marco will never find you. I don't want your money. I want you to shut up and breathe. He almost smiled. Bossy. You made me that way. The SUV screeched to a stop in front of a nondescript building in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Men poured out. More of Dante's people, including a woman with a medical bag who took one look at him and started barking orders. They carried him inside, up to a third-floor apartment that had been converted into a makeshift surgical suite. I tried to follow, but someone held me back. Let the doctor work, Enzo said gently. You'll just be in the way. You need to clean up and let her save his life. He guided me to a bathroom, pressed a towel into my shaking hands. He'll be okay. The boss is too stubborn to die. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Blood everywhere, in my hair, on my face, soaking my sweater. Dante's blood. The man who'd kidnapped me, imprisoned me, and then thrown himself in front of a bullet meant for me. The man who'd looked at me like I was more than invisible. More than a problem. More than leverage in a war, like I was someone worth dying for. I cleaned up mechanically, washing away the blood, changing into clothes someone provided. Then I sat in the hallway outside the surgical room, knees pulled to my chest, and waited. Hours passed. The doctor emerged twice for supplies, her expression grim but focused. Enzo brought me coffee I didn't drink. Teresa arrived, took one look at me, and sat down beside me without a word. He'll be fine, she said finally. I've seen him survive much worse. He took a bullet for me. Of course he did. She said it like it was obvious. You matter to him. I'm nobody. Not to him. Teresa's hand found mine, squeezed. Dante Moretti doesn't protect just anyone, Emma. He doesn't let just anyone close. Since Juliana died, he's kept everyone at a distance. Until you. I don't understand why. Neither does he, I think. But it doesn't make it less real. The surgical room door opened. The doctor stepped out, peeling off bloody gloves, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. He's stable, she announced, and I could breathe again. The bullet missed the major arteries, but he lost a lot of blood. He'll need rest. Lots of it. Can I see him? She hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. He's sedated, but he's been asking for you. I stood on shaking legs and entered the room. Dante lay on a hospital bed that looked too small for his frame, bandages wrapped around his bare shoulder and chest, an IV in his arm. His eyes were closed, his face peaceful in a way I'd never seen while he was conscious. I pulled a chair close to the bed and took his hand, the one without the IV. His fingers twitched, then tightened around mine. Emma. My name was barely a whisper. I'm here. His eyes opened, unfocused from the drugs, but finding me anyway. You're safe. Because of you. I brushed hair back from his forehead, the gesture intimate in a way that should have scared me. You almost died protecting me. Worth it. His thumb moved against my palm, a slow caress. You matter, Emma. Don't you understand? You matter. So do you, I whispered. He smiled. A real smile. soft and almost boyish, nothing like the hard man who ruled through fear. Dangerous words. You've been dangerous from the moment I met you. True. His eyes were closing again, the sedation pulling him under. Stay. Please. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise. He fell asleep with his hand still wrapped around mine, and I sat there in the quiet aftermath of violence, watching him breathe, feeling the steady beat of his pulse against my fingers. Somewhere in the city, Marco Vitelli was planning his next move. Somewhere, the war was still raging. But in this room, in this moment, there was only the two of us, a Mafia boss and the woman he'd saved, connected by something neither of us could name, but both of us could feel. And for the first time since my mother died, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, protected, wanted. Dangerous feelings for a dangerous man. But as I sat there holding his hand, watching the rise and fall of his chest, I couldn't bring myself to care about the danger anymore. 3 days passed in that safe house, while Dante healed and the city held its breath. I barely left his side. The doctor had said rest and monitoring, so I appointed myself his guardian, making sure he took his medication, changing his bandages, forcing him to eat even when he claimed he wasn't hungry. It gave me purpose in a situation where I had no control, something to do besides think about how close I'd come to watching him die. How much that would have destroyed me. Teresa came and went with updates I didn't fully understand. Marco had gone to ground after the failed attack, but his men were still out there, still hunting. The CPD was investigating the gas explosion at Dante's building. 3 residents had been hospitalized for smoke inhalation, but miraculously, no one had died, except for the 8 of Marco's men whose bodies had been quietly removed before the authorities arrived. On the 4th morning, I woke in the chair beside Dante's bed, my new sleeping arrangement, to find him watching me. "You look terrible," he said, his voice still rough but stronger. "You were shot." "I'm allowed to look terrible." I sat up, stretching muscles that ached from too many nights in that chair. "How do you feel?" "Like I was shot." He shifted, wincing, but alive. "Thanks to you. Thanks to your doctor. I just sat here. You stayed." His hand found mine on the blanket. "That's not nothing. We'd been doing this dance for days." These moments of startling honesty followed by retreat into safer territory, but something had shifted after the attack. The walls between captor and captive had crumbled, leaving something rawer, more real, more dangerous. "Dante," I started, then stopped, unsure how to voice what I'd been thinking for 72 hours straight. "Why did you do it? Really? You could have let Marco shoot me. It would have ended everything." "No." His grip tightened on my hand. "It would have started something far worse." "I don't understand." He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "When Juliana died, I swore I'd never let anyone close again. Never care about anyone who could be used against me. It's worked for 15 years. His eyes met mine, and I saw something vulnerable there. Something that looked like fear. Then you walked into that ballroom, all terrified courage and invisible anger, and I couldn't look away. My breath caught. I told myself it was just recognition. You reminded me of her. Same age, same fragility wrapped around hidden strength. But it wasn't that." He pulled my hand to his chest, right over his heart. I could feel it beating, strong and steady beneath bandages and damaged skin. "It was you, Emma. Just you." "I'm nobody," I whispered, but the words felt hollow now. "You keep saying that. Keep believing it." He sat up with effort, ignoring my protest, until we were face to face. "But you're wrong. You delivered a declaration of war to the most dangerous man in Chicago without flinching. You offered yourself to Marco to save my men. You stayed by my side through a firefight when you could have run. You held my hand while I bled and told me I didn't get to die." His free hand cupped my face, rough and gentle. "That's not nobody, Emma. That's someone extraordinary who's been told she's worthless for so long she started to believe it." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "I don't know how to be extraordinary." "You already are." He leaned closer, and I could smell him. Antiseptic and blood and that cologne that had become synonymous with safety. "The question is, Whether you'll let yourself believe it, and if I do, my voice broke. What then? You're still a mafia boss. I'm still the girl who got caught in your war. We're still impossible. Maybe. His forehead touched mine, and I felt the tremor in his breath. Or maybe impossible is just another challenge to overcome. That's insane. Most of my life is insane. He smiled, and it transformed his face into something almost boyish. What's one more impossibility? I should have pulled away. Should have reminded us both about Stockholm Syndrome and power imbalances, and all the very good reasons why falling for your captor was a terrible idea. Instead, I kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, testing. His lips were warm despite the pallor of blood loss, and he tasted like the coffee I'd forced on him an hour ago. For a heartbeat, he froze, surprised. Then his hand slid into my hair, and he kissed me back like I was air, and he'd been drowning. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and hungry. Weeks of tension, of fear, of denying what had been building between us exploded into this moment. His good arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer despite his injuries. I tried to be careful, tried not to hurt him, but he made a sound low in his throat that had nothing to do with pain. Emma. My name was a prayer on his lips. If we do this, there's no going back. I don't want to go back. I kissed him again, tasting the truth in my own words. I don't want to be invisible anymore. I don't want to be afraid. I just want... What? His hand cradled my face like I was something precious. What do you want? You. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. I want you. Even though it's crazy, even though you're dangerous and impossible and I should run as far and fast as I can, I want you. His smile was pure male satisfaction. Then you have me. A knock on the door shattered the moment. We pulled apart as Enzo entered, his expression grim. Boss, we have a problem. Dante's demeanor shifted instantly, from tender to terrifying in a heartbeat. What kind of problem? Marco. He's requested a sit-down, neutral territory, says he wants to negotiate terms. It's a trap. I said it before thinking, but Dante nodded. Of course it's a trap. The question is what kind. He turned to Enzo. When and where? Tonight. Millennium Park. Says to bring the girl or there's no deal. My stomach dropped. He wants to trade me. He wants to kill me and take you. Dante's voice was ice. Standard play. We meet, he ambushes us, eliminates the competition, so we don't go. I gripped his hand. We stay here. We wait him out, and he burns down half the city looking for us. Dante shook his head. No, this ends tonight. One way or another. You're not well enough. I'm well enough to end this. He stood, swaying only slightly, and started pulling on clothes with grim determination. Enzo. Gather everyone. Full tactical. I want snipers on every rooftop within 500 yards. Marco wants war. I'll give him one he can't survive. Dante, please. I caught his arm, desperation making me bold. Don't do this. Not for me. He turned, cupping my face in both hands. Especially for you. Marco took you once, terrorized you, nearly killed you in my own home. That debt gets paid, Emma, in blood. And if you die paying it, then you disappear. New name, new life, far from Chicago. Teresa has everything arranged. He kissed my forehead, gentle despite the violence in his eyes. But I'm not planning to die. I'm planning to win. Millennium Park at night was beautiful and eerie. The bean sculpture reflecting distorted lights, empty pavilions echoing with the sound of our footsteps. The city sparkled around us, oblivious to the showdown about to happen in its heart. Dante had insisted I wear a bulletproof vest under my coat. I'd insisted on coming at all, despite his protests. We'd compromised by surrounding me with 6 of his most trusted men, each armed and ready for Marco's inevitable betrayal. We met at Cloudgate, the Bean, where the metal surface reflected an army of Dante's men positioned throughout the park. I counted at least 20, probably more I couldn't see, snipers on rooftops, just like he'd promised. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a declaration. Marco arrived 15 minutes late. A power play. He had fewer men visible, but I didn't trust that. He was too confident, Too relaxed for someone walking into enemy territory. Moretti? Marco's smile was all teeth. You look like shit. Bullet wound treating you well? Better than you'll be treating your funeral. Dante stood straight despite the pain I knew he was in. You wanted to talk. Talk. Simple terms. Marco's eyes slid to me, and I felt Dante tense beside me. You give me the girl. I give you your life. You leave Chicago. I take your territory. Clean. Easy. Counter-proposal. Dante's voice was dead calm. You leave Chicago in the next 6 hours or I kill you and everyone you've ever loved. Clean. Easy. Marco laughed. You don't have the numbers for that anymore. I've been recruiting while you've been playing nurse to your little pet. Numbers don't mean much when you have the right leverage. Dante pulled out his phone, tapped something, and turned the screen to face Marco. The color drained from Marco's face. I couldn't see what was on the screen, but Marco's reaction told me everything. You're bluffing. Am I? Dante pocketed the phone. Your daughter. Maria, isn't it? 17. Safe at that private school in Connecticut, except she's not there anymore, is she? My men picked her up 3 hours ago. She's comfortable, unharmed, watching movies in a secure location. His smile was a blade, exactly like you did with Emma. Except Emma was innocent. Your daughter? She's leverage. Just like you taught me. You son of a bitch. Marco's hand moved toward his gun. 20 red dots appeared on his chest, laser sights from snipers I couldn't see. I wouldn't. Dante's voice dropped to a lethal purr. I've got 50 men in this park, Marco, all of them ready to end you. The only reason you're still breathing is because I'm giving you a choice. What choice? Leave, tonight. Take your men, leave Chicago, and never come back. Do that, and your daughter goes home safe tomorrow morning. Dante stepped closer, and I saw Marco actually flinch. Or stay, and find out what happens when you take something that belongs to me. The air crystallized with tension. Marco's men shifted nervously. Dante's remained perfectly still, waiting for the order. You've gone soft, Marco spat. Over some worthless girl. Your father would be ashamed. My father is dead. I killed him myself for less than what you've done. Dante's hand found the small of my back. Possessive. Protective. And Emma isn't worthless. She's mine. That makes her the most valuable thing in this city. Something in Marco's expression crumbled. He'd lost, and he knew it. The bluff, the bravado, the attempted power play, all of it meaningless against Dante's absolute certainty. 6 hours, Marco said finally, defeated. 4. I'm feeling generous. Dante's smile was cold. And Marco? If I ever see you again, if I ever hear you're within 100 miles of Chicago, your daughter dies slow. Understood? Marco nodded once, sharp and bitter, then turned and walked away. His men followed, their guns lowering, their shoulders slumped. We'd won. I waited until they were out of sight before I let myself breathe. Did you really kidnap his daughter? Of course not. Dante guided me toward the waiting SUVs. Maria's at school, safe and clueless. But Marco doesn't know that. Won't risk calling the bluff when his own tactics are used against him. You lied. I protected what's mine. He stopped, turning to face me fully. I would do far worse to keep you safe, Emma. Lie, cheat, kill. Whatever it takes. That should terrify me, does it? I thought about it. Really thought about the man standing before me. Dante Moretti, Mafia boss, killer, criminal. The man who'd taken a bullet for me, who'd declared war to protect me, who looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. No, I said finally. It doesn't. Maybe it should. But it doesn't. His expression softened into something I'd only glimpsed in private moments. Then come home with me. Not as a captive. Not as leverage. As mine. You're what? Whatever you want to be. My woman. My partner. My reason for being less of a monster. He pulled me close, careful of his injuries, his forehead resting against mine. I'm not good, Emma. I'll never be good. But I can be better. For you. I kissed him there in the shadow of the bean. in the heart of the city that had tried to break us both, and I felt something click into place. This was insane. Impossible. A fairy tale written in blood and bullets. But it was mine. "Take me home," I whispered against his lips. "Which one?" His smile was soft, genuine. "I have several. Whichever one has you in it." 6 months later, I stood in the window of Dante's rebuilt penthouse, our penthouse now, watching the city wake up in shades of gold and pink, the same view I'd stared at as a captive. But everything was different now. I was different. The medical bills were gone, paid off within a week of Marco's exile. My mother's grave had a proper headstone now, white marble with fresh flowers delivered weekly. I'd gone back to school, business management, because Dante's empire needed someone who understood numbers, and I'd discovered I was good at it. I wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't nobody. I was Emma Moretti. The name change had happened 3 months ago in a private ceremony with just Teresa and Dante's inner circle. Not a traditional wedding, but then nothing about us was traditional. Arms wrapped around my waist from behind, and I leaned back into Dante's warmth. His shoulder had healed, leaving another scar to add to his collection. He wore them like medals, proof of survival. "Morning," he rumbled against my neck. "Morning." I turned in his embrace, studying his face in the early light. Still hard, still dangerous, but softer around the edges when he looked at me. "Teresa called. She needs us at the office by 10. We have time." His hand slid under my silk robe, one of dozens he'd bought me, each more expensive than the last. "I can think of better ways to spend the morning than spreadsheets," I laughed, swatting his chest. "You're insatiable. Only for you." He kissed me slow and deep, and I felt the truth of it in every touch. Dante Moretti loved me, fiercely, possessively, absolutely. And I loved him the same way, despite everything logic said about Stockholm Syndrome and power imbalances. Some loves were too big for logic. The news played on the TV in the background. Something about a major gang bust in New York. Arrests made. Territory seized. Marco Vitelli's name appeared in the ticker. He'd tried to establish himself in new territory and failed spectacularly. "You knew," I said, pulling back to look at Dante. "You knew he'd fail in New York. I may have made some calls, informed some people about his presence, suggested he might be vulnerable." Dante's smile was sharp. "I said I'd kill him if he came back to Chicago. Didn't say anything about making his life hell everywhere else. That's terrible. That's justice." He kissed my forehead. "He terrorized you, nearly killed us both. He doesn't get to be comfortable anywhere." I should have argued, should have said something about mercy, about moving on, but the truth was, I'd become someone who understood that some debts could only be paid in suffering. The world Dante lived in, the world I lived in now, didn't allow for half measures. "Come on." I pulled him toward the bedroom. "If we're going to be late anyway, might as well make it worth it." His laugh was low and wicked. "I've created a monster." "You created your equal." I kissed him, fierce and claiming. "That's different." Later, as we lay tangled in silk sheets, Dante's fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "Do you regret it? Any of it? Being kidnapped, being used as bait, nearly dying multiple times?" I pretended to consider. "Those parts weren't great, Emma." I looked up at him, at this impossible man who'd stolen me from one life and given me another. "No, I don't regret it. How can I regret what led me to you?" "That's insane. Most of my life is insane now." I echoed his words from months ago, watching his smile grow. "What's one more impossibility?" He kissed me then. Soft, sweet, nothing like the violent man the world saw. This was the Dante only I knew. The one who brought me coffee exactly how I liked it, who read to me in Italian when I couldn't sleep, who held me through nightmares and promised safety he'd kill to maintain. The monster who'd become my salvation. We eventually made it to the office, where Teresa waited with contracts and coffee and a knowing smile. She'd been right, all those months ago. Dante had looked at me differently from the start, had protected me, claimed me, changed his entire world to keep me in it. And I'd changed too. From invisible to essential, from nobody to someone, from captive to queen of an empire built on blood and ambition. That night, standing on the balcony of our penthouse with Dante's arms around me, and the city sprawling beneath us like a kingdom. I thought about the girl I'd been, the one serving champagne at the Augustine Hotel, desperate and drowning and invisible. She wouldn't recognize the woman I'd become, but she would understand the choice I'd made. Because sometimes salvation comes from the darkest places, sometimes the monster is the hero, and sometimes love blooms in the space between danger and desire, impossible and inevitable all at once. "What are you thinking?" Dante asked, his chin resting on my shoulder. "That I'm happy." The truth of it surprised me. After everything, Mom dying, losing jobs, being kidnapped, shot at, nearly killed, I'm actually happy. Good. His arms tightened. "Because you're stuck with me now. No escape, no freedom. Just this." "Just this," I agreed, turning to kiss him as the city lights blazed around us. And in the distance, sirens wailed. The soundtrack of Chicago, of danger, of the life I'd chosen. But up here, in Dante's arms, in our fortress above the city, I was safe. I was seen. I was loved. The Mafia boss had rejected me once, in that moment when he could have claimed me at the ballroom. Had let Marco take me first, but he'd come for me anyway, saved me, changed me, made me his in every way that mattered, and I'd claimed him right back.